This is Divinely Inspired, where we interview visionaries, change agents, and wisdom keepers who inspire us to live our best life and always show up with love. I'm your host, Divinely Jennifer. Welcome. Hello, beauty. Welcome to the latest episode of Divinely Inspired. I am your host, Divinely Jennifer, and I am super excited to bring Patty Lennon to you today. And I'll read her bio to you. Patty Lennon is a best-selling author, and man, I can't wait to tell you about her book. Keynote speaker, certified coach, and founder of The Receiving School. She is a former type A corporate banker who discovered there was more to life than making money. Patty holds a master's in psychology and has been featured in Forbes, Fast Company, and Daily Worth. She blends brain science and metaphysics to help her fellow humans manifest their dreams into reality. Patty can be found on the web at www.pattylennon.com, and I will post that below, and on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Patty Lennon. And I've known Patty now for a few years. We met at a gathering at the Chi Center in New Mexico and hit it right off. Where Patty's wisdom, her love, her sense of humor, everything about her, I just felt so drawn to getting to know her better, and the way she worked so beautifully with the spirit world and intuition. And fast forward to this year, Patty published her book, Making Space for Magic. And let me tell you, that book is transformational. And it talks about receiving and how we have to make space for the magic to happen in our world. We cannot always be doing. We have to make space for the magic. And we talk about that here. We talk about the love of the divine and how we are all going through a whole lot of BS right now, but it is all for the best with where our beautiful planet is heading. So, my loves, with no further ado, here is Divinely Inspired with Patty Lennon, my guest, and I'm your host, Divinely Jennifer. Thanks so much for joining us. Patty Lennon, welcome to Divinely Inspired. It's so lovely to connect with you and have you here inspiring my listeners and your listeners. And at a time when the world feels so unstable, that we're on the precipice of so much change for ourselves, and then also at this global cosmic level. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on today was, first of all, I'm going to keep plugging your book throughout this entire interview, as Make Space for Magic, because it had such a profound effect on me. I literally sat on the sofa and received it for 3 days. I didn't do anything else except sit on the sofa and read this. And it was medicine for my soul. So first of all, if you haven't read Patty's book, Make Space for Magic, please go out and get yourself a copy. It's magical. And I also just feel like we are at a point where we're receiving these messages from the divine, these loving messages, but sometimes they don't feel so loving. And how do we then transform them within ourselves to come back to that space of love? So thank you so much for taking time out of your day today to join us.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Me
I
too.
love talking about this. I don't like living it, but I like talking about it.
Exactly. Well, one of the things that really struck me in the book was how in the very first page you said your career plan as a little girl was to be a missionary and to teach people about God's love and this unconditional loving force that is out there in the world. And I'm wondering, what was your first memory of God, of this benevolent, loving energy out in the world?
It's such a good question. And I don't remember never not knowing God. I'm trying to think, like, when did I see God as an actual entity, right? Other than myself, because like faith was my mother and father had really deep faith. They were also very strict traditional Irish Catholics, but their faith wasn't just rule based. It was part of them. Um, and I don't know that I have like a memory from when I was really little, but from a young age, my dad would take me to wakes and funerals. My mom would stay at home. My brother was a lot younger than I was, but it was a very normal thing for me to random people, not people I loved. And I think that probably when I look back on where I knew that God was out there was just this sense of peace I always had around death because I knew someone was going back home. It wasn't because someone told me that. It was like I just knew it. I felt it. And I knew that they were going back home to God is the word I used to use. I tend to use divine now just to be, for me, God's always the divine masculine. So mhm.
That's tell me more about that. So this concept of God being more masculine, is the divine more feminine or all encompassing?
Yeah, the divine to me then feels like it leaves space for everything. Although lately, because things have been so tumultuous, I found the real, and my mom's no longer alive, to really identify with the divine mother is different. And she's taking multiple forms. So, traditionally it was Virgin Mary, but I've never felt particularly close to her because weirdly I've always felt judged by her, even though she's the least judgmental force, in the celestial world. I just always did. Motherhood is definitely at the crux of where I worry that I'm not enough still. And she sort of is held up there as the best of the best. So but I have been working with her lately, and then Kuan Yin and White Tara and like different um, aspects. And then the Black Madonna, Our Lady of Guadalupe, is like one of the last that's joined me, and she helps me when I'm working with crowds or groups. She joins me to help make sure that I'm anchoring mother energy for people in community.
Mm. And it's so interesting. We just had this Cancer full moon a couple of days ago, as we're filming this, and that is about that maternal, nurturing, emotional space of feminine, and then Capricorn, where the sun was, is so masculine. Very that divine, loving father energy, but very strict, right? Because a loving father is not going to throw you out into the lake and say swim. They're going to make sure that you've got the foundation. You can paddle and you can kick and you can do all that. So there's that the dichotomy between flow and structure.
Mm.
Um, wow, this is so interesting because what I can feel your mom very present right now. And she's like, throw those questions away, Jennifer. Let's get to the nitty gritty here.
That's awesome.
So as you're talking about these ascended masters, Green Tara, Mother Mary, how have in these times of incredible change of 2020, 2021, losing your father after losing your mother, which you talk about so beautifully and gracefully in your book. It's so heartfelt and you can really feel their presence there. But how are these ascended masters of the feminine coming? How have they been manifesting? So this mother energy, but what else I feel like there's something else that's coming in for you here with that energy.
Well, I'm living on the edge of a new body of learning or a new like evolution in my own spiritual journey, and it's one that I can't even put words to because I'm in the middle of it, right? If we're talking caterpillar to butterfly, I'm sort of the end of the cocoon period where I'm having to like let go of the last legs that are left if I'm going to get my wings, right? And it's like, but what if the wings don't come? And then I can't walk or fly. Right? Um, But the one thing that's been really alive in all of it is really struggling to have compassion for myself in the speed that I'm navigating this. And you can't rush transformation. You can't rush the mess. But I'm finding that old voice that is kind of patriarchal of like, are you doing this right? Are you meditating enough? Are you that enough? Are you doing enough to be right? And so where they're having this very deep conversation with me is really to show me that nurturing love and help me connect to it and send it back to myself.
That compassionate piece is so important, and feels like, as we go into this talk, as we talk about this, the concept of receiving, you've been running the receiving school for a few years, at least several years. And then in your book, you talk about how we have to make space for the magic. We have to make space to receive. And for so many of us, it's this deep, deep wound around receiving, because in some ways, the way our world is structured, right? If you're menstruating and you've got cramps, you can't take the day off. You got to take an Advil and go and man up, and instead of honoring that rhythm, the rhythm of our body that's being called in, and to have that self-compassion feels so key. It feels like the key in so many ways.
Yeah, it definitely is. And it's, like any transformation that any of us go through, it usually feels like, oh, am I back here again? Right? Like I thought I got this already. And I did. I got it on a lot of levels, when it's just a new level, you're never done. And when I'm in the receiving school, I would say probably 50, like when it's active and we're live, 50 to 60% of the answers I'm giving people to their questions is just helping them to honor their truth and to love themselves for it, to have, to see what's actually happening in their lives and say, oh yeah, this is hard. Like, it's okay that this is hard for me. It's okay. Like, I'm not doing something wrong that this is hard, and now I'm having to do that again for myself, and it feels a little bizarre. It really does, but it feels, the conflict and the confusion feel very alive. And that's where, particularly Kuan Yin has been helping a lot.
With the self-compassion in that regard.
It took sort of like, yes, like she sort of just helps me let the confusion fall away and just see that all things are love. And so if I am not in a position to, book a live event. So I decided to move live event that I had planned to have in September to next year because just the logistics of running live events right now just feels so hard. I give so much credit to people that are doing it. But I also feel like I'm in process. And when I tap in, I don't think I'm going to be ready to physically hold space for a couple of hundred people. Maybe I will, but right now I don't know. And so then that feels confusing because I felt so like it felt so right. And now I'm, and there's like tons of money already out the door, right? And it's not money I'm losing because I'm just bumping it. But so that all like becomes crowded and confused and like, is this right answer? Because I'm not getting a no, I'm just getting, I don't know. And yet having it out there without marketing it felt very hard. So then Kuan Yin, when I bring Kuan Yin into my heart, it's almost like that drains away. And the idea of, oh, you already had the date set. Oh, you already had money out the door. Oh, you don't know anything for sure. And she just brings me into this loving place of let go, just let
I love what you said earlier about working so hard to be. And because as you're talking about Kuan Yin and this energy of letting go, is that truly the being that we've all been striving for?
Yeah. Yeah. To just, to let yourself know what you know. You'll know when you need to take action, like from your heart, from your soul. It's your head that's like, no, you're screwing up. Oh my God, if you really believe meditating is what's going to get you the answer, for the love of God, sit down and meditate. And if you're not getting where you need to go, you're not meditating right. Do it right.
Right. You got to breathe more. You got to pick a different card. All these beautiful tools that we have that we perhaps become a little bit reliant upon instead of going back and trusting in that divine love that we opened up our conversation with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. It does feel like everyone is going through some type of struggle right now. Really questioning, what are my gifts? How do because if I have this energy deficit, how do I want to spend my time to refill my cup? And also, a lot of us are providing for our families, or, it'd be great to just not worry about those things. But in the world we live in, there are certain structures and formalities that we have to pay for. And so it's like some people on the outside, it looks like they have everything, but on the inside they don't. And I'll be in a mastermind or in a women's circle, and they're just going, I'm exhausted. Mm. When you're advising people and you're working with entrepreneurs and others, what's the first step in making space for refilling their cup? What comes up? What's the first thing that you recommend to people when they're in that space?
Well, almost always it's to rest. So it's just to identify, for one person, it's going to be take a nap in the middle of the day. For another person, it's going to be take 2 weeks off. It really depends on where they are in already doing the other things that, the stage things, because it's not that the nap is sufficient, but the nap would be all someone who never naps, who's exhausted. That's all their mind can get on board with. Anything beyond that would just send them into, such a level of worry that then they'd be taxing their adrenals, and it perpetuates a cycle. So it's, what is the little step that gets you rested? Because really the chemical, the physiological result of rest is that state where you can really tell the difference between the answers your soul is giving you, which will always tell you exactly what you need to fill your cup, and your head.
So leaning into the guidance of your soul, the wisdom of your soul to say, this is what I need in order to feel restored, rejuvenated.
Yeah. And specifically rest so that you can get that answer.
Because being so tired, just that confusion, right? It scrambles our signals in so many ways.
It does. And it with that level, when your adrenals are producing cortisol, which is what, you're producing, I know, this, like when you're in worry, or you're just over taxing your system, it can only produce one hormone. If it's producing cortisol, it's not producing the other stuff. And then you don't have the other stuff. And then brain function starts to change, and it becomes very warped. And you perceive things in a very warped fashion, which puts the amygdala, the fear brain, really on high alert, because it feels like there is danger everywhere. When your adrenals are shot, everything feels like danger. So then your amygdala is grabbing all the power, all the blood flow, and it's like, nope, we're keeping the tigers at bay. And you can't listen in here to the subtle language of the soul, because this is shouting at you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why do you think it's so hard for people? And I would say for women in particular, but I also see men who put themselves in these places sometimes of overwork and depletion. Why do you think it's so hard for people to make space to rest, to receive, to make space for divine magic?
I mean, a few things. One is we're from a young age, we're socialized to believe rest is bad. Rest is for the weak. Actually, even my daughter just said it to me. She had a sleepover the weekend and she's a very dedicated student. So she's not someone who's kind of like, she takes her responsibilities as a student very seriously. I have another child who does not. So I know that and I'm not claiming victory in this corner. That is, she was born like that. I had nothing to do with it. But she was really dragging and we thought we were going to have a delay. So I was like, just turn off your alarm and, kind of sleep in. But then she kept her alarm on. We didn't have a delay. And she goes, maybe I just need to take tomorrow off. And I think she's taken maybe over the last 5 years, like 2 personal health days like that. And I said, yeah, I think that would be a good idea. And she goes, do you think I'm weak if I have to do that? Now, in this household, we are not speaking that language. We just aren't ever. And, but that she's just absorbing that through her, through osmosis, through the world, So one, we just have all these messages that strong, the people that do things all the time and that can push through, they're the heroes, right? And the heroines, and they're the good ones. And like, if you're not getting something done and you can't push through it, it's because you're weak. So that's one thing. And then the other side of it, basically the same reason is that we're getting these messages is as a young child, you received messages that when someone was resting, they were lazy. And as we grow, and we understand nuance, we build more nuanced structures in our brain. So it reprograms things. But this one is one where you rarely ever get that nuance programmed in. Someone's not telling you at 7, it's okay to slow down, or at 10, it's okay to take a personal health day. You're not, and if they're saying, am I weak or is that okay? Giving the child enough information so that they can create nuance between laziness and, true laziness, which is, oh, no, you don't want to do this. You're avoiding it, to actual quality rest. So we don't even have the mental structures for what that looks like. And when we don't, actually choosing it then becomes a giant effort. And when you're already exhausted and depleted, you don't have the energy for a giant effort.
Mm-hmm. I just feel into the kids these days and what it was hard enough being in middle school or a teenager back when we were kids, and thinking about how much more challenging it's been in the last couple of years with, really, like I said, the word instability and uncertainty really is, I feel like, is really highlighting where our world is at. And, in your podcast, that you just, where you were talking about how you took a sabbatical in December and it ended up not being what you expected it to be. And how there was this general sense of betrayal from the universe that people are feeling. And what do you think the source of this betrayal is that people are feeling? And what do you think the loving message of the betrayal could be for us dense humans?
Yeah. And so the betrayal is an illusion, right? It's how we're interpreting things. And I think the sense of it is that, we've always, when we feel betrayed by the divine, it's because we've made an unconscious contract with the divine. I'm going to do this, and then you're going to care for me in this way. When I started my business, I thought I'm going to leave banking and become this coach and do like my real work, my God work in the world. And I didn't realize I was thinking this. God's just going to bring me the clients. Like God's going to take care of the sales and marketing. And God did not take care of the sales and marketing. I found out when my accountant gave me my first year's income tax return. And you need to do it, right? But the reason was because when you do your own sales and marketing, that's when you learn how to talk about yourself in an appropriate way. That's when you learn to honor your gifts, to actually ask for money, like ask for something in exchange for what you do. And that's not a conversation people have when they are employed by others, right? Except if you're going to go for a raise or a new job. With an entrepreneur, you're having to get that message all the time. And it's good because it then causes you to sit in a place of more power, more personal power. But in that space, it doesn't feel good, right? So, I think the unconscious contract that a lot of people are operating under is, I know what spirit wants from me. Spirit wants me to operate from my soul and to follow messages and to, connect to myself. And of course, to be a good person, be kind to others, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the edge for a lot of us right now is really truly honoring what our soul is asking, because there's so much chaos. So then you really tap in, you do that thing, and then the result that you expected doesn't show up. And you're like, WTF. And that's the betrayal, right? Is that, whoa, wait a second. It wasn't like I'm going to go to a job 9 to 5 and they're never going to fire me. Like that kind of like betrayal that like the generation sort of in the middle between us and the older generation felt, where they were the first generation to start getting let go. But that was an unconscious contract that everyone was operating under. If I'm a loyal employee, I'm going to have a job for the rest of my life. And it didn't, and that used to be the case, right? So I think our betrayal right now is happening because we thought we were learning how to fill our cups. Maybe you're, someone else was learning how to have the courage to leave an unfulfilling job, or, how to do the courageous thing to walk your spiritual path. And then all of a sudden there's no money in the bank account, or in my case, refilling my well, and I end up with domino effect problems that require all my attention. Legitimately, my husband needs an operation and literally needs my care. And it feels like, what's going on here? But interestingly enough, I was just interviewing someone for my podcast, and I asked them that question, and they said, we need to make a commitment on whether we're going to believe that this divine being, whatever word you call it, that this is a benevolent universe. You have to choose. Are you choosing that this is a benevolent universe, or are you choosing something else? Because if you're choosing this as a benevolent universe, then all of this is just in process. And then you move into trust. And that is needed more than a full cup is needed for the journey we're about to take on this planet.
And, as you're talking about all of that, I think about all of the ways we thought we were supposed to manifest, right? We have our vision board, we have our affirmations, we have all of these things, we've watched The Secret and all these different beautiful, loving people sharing their message across the world now for, gosh, at least a decade, maybe more. But the piece that has been left out is what my partner calls the art of allowing. Where and you talk about this so beautifully in the book, is like, you can't just be doing all the time, because you do have to have that trust in the universe, this or something better. But it's not necessarily going to happen in the way we think it's going to happen, especially when we attach details to it. My new Lexus is going to be red, or whatever it is that we have this vision of what we're calling in. And, so how do you feel like that is really impacting us in this moment as part of this shifting that people are going through for what's going to be happening on planet Earth for us all, and going back into that space again, that receiving space?
Yeah. And I think, it comes down to, as you know, I rail against the general message of The Secret. I think the heart of the message was good, but I think that it was commercialized, and a lot of people walked away with this idea that the penultimate experience of manifestation is to bring, like, expensive car or house or a material gift into your life, right? And it neglected to discuss how manifestation works, which, key piece of it, which is if it's for your highest good. Mm-hmm. That when you're manifesting, you can will anything into your life. Like you can keep getting the no from the universe, and then just like, the universe is like, all right, you're clearly not going to move on until you see what a bad idea this is. So occasionally you'll get the thing you want, even if it's not for your highest good, because it's creating such a block for you. But when we ask the universe for something by having a desire, we have to leave room for yes and no and not yet to be on the table. And so already I think a lot of people were set up to believe that if they weren't getting it, it was because they were not doing something right. Whereas I've tried to share the message that no, pretty much asking for it's all you got to do. If you're not getting it, then the answer is no, not yet. And now the time that we're in, I think it's for even those of us who do understand that no, not yet, is to accept, to receive all the no's and all the not yets. And now they're happening on a level that actually cuts really close to the core. You don't get a car. Okay, it's disappointing, but you're talking about me like desperately needing a rest and preaching it and knowing that God wants me preaching the importance of it and doing all the courageous work to make space for it. And then, nope, here, I'm going to hand you 2 teenagers with problems and a husband who needs, and that feels very destabilizing, because I thought the foundation of my safety was being full, was being spiritually full. And the universe is saying, no, you're always safe. And you have to choose this.
As you're speaking, the phrase that came in is that we're experiencing a revolution against the shoulds.
I love that.
Because I hear so many people going, I know I should do this, or I know I shouldn't do this, but I just don't want to, or I've been doing that and it's not working for me, particularly for entrepreneurs. And there's this vision of how you're supposed to be doing the sales and marketing piece. And people are going, that's just not aligned with me anymore. Now what?
And it might be, and it's not working. Right? Like I'm doing all the right things. I've done the things. I've made them better. I've been, I've faced all the difficulties. I've honed my message to be a spiritually aligned, love-filled message. I know the thing I'm selling is something that someone wants. And then the launch is crap. And yeah, it's hard to receive that. It is really hard to receive that. But if you can then conceptualize that you didn't do, I think this is the key. You have to remove the thought that you did something wrong. If you can remove the thought that I did something wrong here, all that shame, all that judgment, all that guilt that you may think you're blaming God, but you're actually mad at yourself. That all goes away. And when you get rid of all of that stuff, and then you're only left with love, then you can say, okay, well, if the launch wasn't going to work, then I'm going to trust that my needs can still be met. I'm going to trust that this isn't the end of the story, that we're in process, and on and on.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that. I want to venture back for a minute into this topic that we just briefly talked about it. And I've talked about it in a few other interviews and in my astrology, and talking about the path that the planet is on, that we as humans are on in this incredibly challenging and also exciting time, depending on how we're looking at it at any given day. And right. I'm wondering where, if you're able to share, where are your guides showing us that we are going?
Well, first, normally I get those like long-term sort of visions, and they've generally been blocked. But some of the key messages that came starting at the beginning of the pandemic was that financial systems would be changing and shifting. And I think that the shift in financial systems is a big piece of protecting Mother Earth. Because a lot of the compromise to Mother Earth comes from bodies of power and money choosing against Mother Earth. And there's also just huge disparities between who has sufficiency and who does not. And so, I mean, where we're going is where humans can easily choose on behalf of one another. They can naturally choose on behalf of one another. Like, we got rid of single-use plastics, I don't know, let's say 2 years ago, I want to say, in our household. And we use some of it still, but most of it we don't. And for my husband and I, that was a very challenging decision. It was efforting. In the beginning, we grumbled. For my daughter, that was not the case. And she was sort of the one that pushed that happening. And for her, the problem of having them, and just, it was so obvious to her that they should not be used, right? I think even just the way we navigated the pandemic in terms of vaccinations and masks and everything that involved in the pandemic, there was a lot of, why won't you do things the way I'm doing them? There's team mask and there's team no mask. There's team vaccination, there's team no vaccination. And then there was this team, there's purple people coming and they're telling me the truth, and you don't get to talk to the purple people. Only I talk to the purple people. Purple people have told me the truth. So there were these teams, and if you're not on my team, you're against me. You're either for me or against me. And I think where we're going is a place where that isn't required by our brains to feel safe. But I don't think that's happening like next year or anything. No. I think that's the journey.
I laugh in solidarity with that. Because it's interesting. I was only allowed to see the astrology for several months. I was only allowed to see the astrology through the beginning of March. And it's slowly but surely, the lens has widened a bit. But there's certainly something very extreme feeling about the next 8 weeks. So we're filming this on January 19th, and something feels really big over the next 8 weeks. And if we can get ourselves over that hurdle, so to speak, then we'll be able to, it'll be like spring.
Yeah, things will be clear. Absolutely. I see the same thing. Energetically, there will be space in March. But I think the thing that we have to let go of is this idea that, and then we're done.
Yeah.
We're not done. The good news is this is a 6 year, so it's a year of harmony. And if you've already been not efforting, but if your efforts, whatever they are, have included giving more balance inside your work, inside your home, inside what you're creating, like any place where you've put time and energy to creating balance and harmony, I think will be very well rewarded. And the more someone has resisted balance and harmony, the tougher the challenges they will be presented with this year will be.
Mm-hmm. Because the messages have been so strong.
Yeah. And because the goal of this year is harmony. And so if you've been not doing that, then you're going to face a lot of stuff that's going to destabilize your bullshit, so that harmony can take over.
Right. And when we're feeding, if one is feeding into that polarity, if one is feeding into the you're on my team or you're not on my team,
Yes.
that is not contributing to harmony.
Right. Right.
Instead of the you do you, I'll do me, and we'll find our common ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There may only be 2 notes in the melody, 2 notes in your melody and 2 notes in my melody that sound good together and create that harmony, but let's focus on those 2 notes. Right.
Yeah.
So if you could only be of service in one way in the next year, what would that be?
Well, I'm going to give you my wish list item, but since I'm still navigating it, I don't, it would be to help people trust this is a benevolent universe.
And I have to say that really is the message of your book. I don't know how you crammed so much love into, it's not a 300-page tome, but you crammed so much love into that book. It's just so powerful. It's such a powerful message. And I felt, I kind of took it personally as I was reading, and I felt like you were talking to me, and you, Patty, were giving me, Jennifer, love in that book, and also feeling the love of the divine, and particularly the love of your parents coming through and all of that forgiveness. It's so much easier to forgive others than it is ourselves.
Yeah.
And that is a part of this process that we are all going through right now.
Yes. I mean, my overall purpose in life boils down to one thing, which is I just want to make sure that I'm doing as good of a job as I can, helping people understand that the divine loves them and how they're loved, how unconditional love actually looks and feels like. And when I wrote the book, it really was, I was really holding the space of loving others, and writing it for one person. And I'm glad it reads that way. That it was this conversation that I get you, I get it. I get, for you to have read to the second page, I already know who you are. And I get you. And I have so much love for you because I have seen time and time again the messages come through me of how much love and pride there is on the other side of the veil. You don't even have to go up as high as the divine, right? You can go to just loved ones, not just, but, beings that are not omnipotent, that are on the other side of the veil. And they are just, without this human condition, they see just how incredible you are, right? And so that was part of it. And part of it was just for me to show how I ended up going through so much darkness, and not darkness like I had a violent experience, like not these really horrific tales, that everyday stuff can put you in a place where you feel unloved. And like how do we see the mistruths in there? Like, how can we spot the illusion thought that is wrong so that we can like let that one go? That was always my goal, was just through my own little shit show for the reader to feel less alone in her own stuff, you know, and to see how dark it was at times, and it resolved itself, right? Usually because I stopped trying so damn hard.
You got out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Speaking of messages from the divine, from spirit, are there any? You're so intuitive. I remember that was one of the first conversations we had when we met, was about messages from the divine. Are there any messages coming in from the divine or from the spirit world that want to be shared through you today?
I'm going to listen because it changes minute to minute. You know, our collective free will changes what's available to us minute to minute. Okay, interesting. This is not something I've heard before. So, what I'm hearing is for each person to make an individual point of connection. And so they're saying, like, I have chosen Kuan Yin, and you have chosen the power of the planets, right? As your like, as one of the ways for you to like connect. That it will be very beneficial to any person to find a single point of connection, or, you know, about a few, but ones that are yours, and to rely on those. And the vision they're giving me is almost when you're in like very choppy waters, to know what your boat is, right? So like you're in the water, you're maybe hanging onto like a piece of wood, and there's this little dinghy, and then maybe there's like a cruise ship, and then there's like, it doesn't matter which one you pick. Just get into a individualized relationship, because that will help weather the storm that we're in. So that's just one message that came through.
That's funny. I just picked the spirit guide card yesterday from your deck when I had an Akashic record reading to meet my spirit guides last week. It was amazing. Oh my gosh. Totally recommend everyone doing it. And then yesterday I was talking with a client, and she goes, I need to consult with the committee. And she goes, I know you won't think I'm crazy when I say that. And I burst out laughing, and I said, I know exactly what you're talking about, that we do have this committee of mostly benevolent beings who are, they might be a little bit mischievous in getting our attention, you know, but for the most part, that there's so much outside of ourselves available in any moment for us to ask for help and
Yes.
to find that boat, so to speak.
And when you said that word mischievous, this other message came through, which was also a fascinating message. I think I've been getting it, but I've sort of been like not hearing it, is there's so much opportunity for fun right now. Like, you cannot make a plan and take action on it right now. It will not work. It will not work. So stop trying. Go have some fun. You will not be losing time, because you cannot do anything to make something work. Things will work, but they're going to work on their own. They're going to have nothing to do with your executive functioning powers. So apply those elsewhere. So those are two brand new messages. I love that.
I love it. I love it too. And that really resonates so much with, I think, where we are, because we're all taking it so damn seriously. And just to remember, just go outside and watch the birds. We have a peacock in our yard, and she is hysterical. So cool, but very funny.
Peacock is my animal helper that helps me connect to source. So it's so funny that you said that.
I call her Josephine. I don't know if she's male or female, but she's so funny. And then she just honks around the roof and, you know, makes his or her presence very known.
I love that. And then they gave me this metaphor too, to help you understand, not you specifically, anyone that's listening who's like, what does that look like to have fun? Or, and this may not give you the exact answer, but it's like if you're at school, when you were younger and you were at school and there was a fire drill, like math stopped, English stopped, like whatever class you were taking stopped, and you're outside and you know you got to stay there until the fire department comes and they check all the hallways, and like there's nothing you can do, right? So every child knows to just goof off once they're outside, right? You just goof off because you're like, ah, we're in a fire drill. So they said treat this time like that.
It's a cosmic fire drill. I love that. I love that image, just seeing the little kids and just the fact that so many of us are reconnecting with our inner child right now. It can be a lot of fun and take so much delight in simplicity. We when we're adulting, we can make things so complicated for ourselves.
Yes. You know, I had when you said that, I just had an awareness last week where I was worried. It may not have been last week, maybe the week before. I was worried that I was actually headed into a depression. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe I'm depressed. Like maybe that's what this is. And if I am, it's, you know, reasonable. It's a very common place you get to when you've got a lot of pressure on you, right? And so situational depression is a thing. And I'm like, maybe I'm depressed. And then all of a sudden, I started to become aware that I'm not supposed to be back at work. Like I'm not supposed to be going full force. I need to take things off my plate. I never got the break that I needed. And as I started to like energetically let go of goals and shoulds and get it done lists and all these things I had written before I went on the sabbatical that I would handle when I got back, and I mentally put them forward a couple more months, all of a sudden the thing I thought was depression just started to lift. And I do want to offer that to you because I think a lot of people are feeling depressed right now. And the thing is, you might legitimately be depressed, but if you actually let go of the responsibilities that you're making up, you know, you really are making up a lot of your responsibilities. And if you just let them go, if you just let go of them completely, does that mood sort of lift? Because if it does, then it's not depression, it's self-inflicted something, sadness,
overwhelm.
Mm-hmm.
That feels like such a beautiful message to close on. Is there anything else, any one concept or other piece of wisdom that you want to share with everyone listening today?
Well, there was something you had said to me in an email ahead of this interview where because I talk about in the book how frustrating it was that people thought it's just easy for me, and like trying to convey that's not how it looks like behind the scenes. And I honestly don't think I try to even convey that that it's easy for me. You know, it's just a perception, right? It's just a perception. And what I would offer is, and you already alluded to it, is if you are doing the compare and despair thing, where you're like seeing other people out there and you think they have it together, we all know compare and despair is not helpful. But I also want you to know it's not the whole story. It is not the whole story. And if you can just really embrace that, you know, what you see is not the whole story of others, I think then it's easier to turn the lens back on yourself and just be in your story. So that's.
Be in your story. Be in your story and be in your boat.
Metaphors abound.
That's right. I love it. I love the images. So if you'll share with everyone, I'll be putting the name of your book and resources and your website and things below so people can find it. But where can people find you?
Yes, so you can go to the book page right now, and whenever you're watching this, whatever we have available for free, like any of the good freebies or a chapter, whatever it is, will be on the book page along with the order forms for the book. So could go to pattylen.com/make space for magic, all one word. And then if you really want to connect with me at this point, I'm generally staying off social media a lot. So, I mean, we're putting content out to social media, but if you just want to see what's kind of like, if you want to continue this conversation with me, my contact form is the best place to like get in touch, or listen to my podcast, Space for Magic, where I'm giving you the latest and greatest in my journey through this bullshit. So
I just love you, Patty. It does feel like that sometimes, doesn't it? Like we're just shoveling shit right now.
yep. Yeah, and we don't have to pretend that the shit is sacred. You know, I mean, it is, but we don't have to, if we're not there yet, we don't have to pretend like it is.
And when in doubt, there's always dark chocolate.
Yes.
When in doubt, there's always dark chocolate. Thank you so much for your time today. It's flown by. Our conversation has flown by. I feel like we could just keep riffing for a while, but I want to be mindful to everyone listening. And this feels very complete. Anytime you end on chocolate, it feels complete.
I agree. And I thank you for having me here.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Okay, beauties. Thank you so much for joining me today. Isn't Patty amazing? I tell you, she seems like, we were talking about in the interview, she seems like she has all of her stuff together. She just has that energy about her. And she is human, just like the rest of us. And perhaps this is why she inspires me so much. I hope she has inspired you on your journey of awakening, of receiving, and of feeling into all the beautiful, unconditional love of the divine. As I said, I'll be posting Patty's info below. If you need to reach me, you can find me at www.divinelyjennifer.com. You can also comment below if you're watching this on YouTube, and you can send me an email at hello@divinelyjennifer.com. Thanks so much, beauty. Have a beautiful day. I love you, and I will see you the next time.